how many jobs mention C++ or C#, and you get a sort of feel for the rough sort of number that there might be twice as many Java as this green one, C#. That's not to say don't learn C#, just means that there's more jobs in that. But there might be more people going through it as well. You can I've often said, you can reverse these things round and say, well, let's actually look at perhaps training in something that not many people want. And then you can command a higher sort of grade for it. Other ones are sort of growing, although this bottom one here, Angular, still not widely used. It's a very sort of popular one, but it's grown from nothing about 3 years ago to being relatively sort of popular for it, whereas other ones are dropping down. So there might be more of a leaning to who's doing what. We're going to be looking here at using jQuery. I didn't put JavaScript in there, perhaps I should have done a search. But it's, it might be nice just to do a live search for some of these. Or looking at IT Jobs Watch, similar sort of thing for jobs around salary distribution of Ajax. Knowing sort of Ajax, what's the average salary? Ranging from entry level at around 20k, depends on how good you are. What the sort of average ones there. Again, that was done about mid-September. IT Jobs Watch a good idea, just again to feed in a particular language, technology, job title, to see, if you're going out there looking for a job, what sort of thing might you expect? Bearing in mind that you might not have any experience, or you might have a year's experience if you've been out on placement to sort of work with. You can fill up these sort of pages with charts. How many job postings cited web services? But since, about 2005 there, either permanent or contract, how people wanting work with web services has just sort of increased over the years for it. So, that's a bit of the hard sell for Ajax, basically, why you should perhaps sort of develop that skill yourself. What we're going to have a look at is what's the basic process, and this is what we'll be doing in the lab. And in the lab, I'll take us both what we're doing on the lecture slides here. We'll have a look at the demos for it, but I'll take it a bit further than what we've done in the lecture as well to sort of push it, because we've got quite a bit to get through. You do have to know JavaScript and HTML for the browser side to it. The programming language on the browser side has got to be really sort of JavaScript. As I say, possibly you might work in Silverlight, possibly in VB script, almost certainly not in applets, although you might find some sort of early ones, possibly in Flash. But yeah, the sort of JavaScript option is the sort of main one. And learning some of this HTML. Now, I've put a bit on, if you're not that familiar with HTML5 or XHTML and JavaScript, I'll put a bit of background reading to help familiarise you with what some of the basic concepts of JavaScript, etc. are. Well, we are looking at this second part here, this sort of web service idea, where your client is going to request something off the server. We're not looking at using a form. You've done that sort of to death already in your first year, and we had a quick look at it last week for it. What you're doing here is that there are lots of methods available to sort of call upon, but the basic idea is that we create an object that can send an HTTP request, something that can request over the internet using HTTP protocol. And inside that, you've got to put the information of where you want to go to, who you're trying to contact, what's that web server address, some sort of handler function, because when this data comes back, you'll request something, you'll be requesting it from wherever this server is. This data will come back as some sort of structured data, and you can't just assemble that straight off. It's not coming back as HTML and you tell the browser to do it. So it's got to go here into a handler, a function that will extract the data and place it on the page somewhere for you. So this is what we call an anonymous response handler that will trigger when that data comes back. So we then can initiate a get or a post to that server and send the data off. There might be some data off a form or some data from where somebody's typed in. It may be that you're triggering that request every 5 seconds, or every second, or every half hour. Depending, it's sort of time based. It may be on a key press or some other event. Some event will trigger this request, and then you'll wait for the response to come back. Either the server sent back a status code of 200, everything's good, or a ready state, what we call a ready state, which says all the data's finished coming in. You extract the response data, either XML, JSON, or whatever, and do something with it. That's the overall sort of process. That's how we're going to do in our JavaScript. In the HTML, we've got to have something that says, can we run JavaScript? Where is this JavaScript to run? We've got to load it in. And we've got to be able to designate control to initiating that request. So you might have a button that says, when they click this button, run this JavaScript for it. And what it typically involves is giving IDs to all the elements on the page, so that you can say, well, that input button over there with that ID, or that area where I want a drop-down list. So everything's got to be addressable. This is why we've got to have it in XHTML, so that everything's got a unique placeholder name for it, like a variable name to work with. Now, this week, we're having a look at how you do it in raw JavaScript, how you do it in the JavaScript language itself. Next week, possibly the week after, because this is going to take a bit longer than I thought, I think. We'll look at tools to help you do it. Because a lot of the things that we'll be doing here are you do every time. And so there's like little software libraries to help you do the common tasks. And that's where things like jQuery come in. There's quite a few others, Scriptaculous and Dojo. There's quite a few toolboxes to help you with it. We'll look at it in raw JavaScript, so you know what's happening in the background. And then we can sort of superimpose a front end on that, well, a library on front of that to help you with it. Now, the idea of getting this response object, and what I'm sort of working through, is this sort of series of things, like getting a request object. Now, actually, it'd be worthwhile, put a star on this page. For the last 5 years, there's been a question that says, tell me what the basic, on the exam, by the way, this. For the last 5 years or so, there's been a question that says, explain the basic Ajax process. What happens at each stage with some sample code as to what happens. And basically, that's the answer for it. And you're expected then to sort of talk about the individual bullet points about what's happening. This bit about getting a request object, something that can hold all the information, because it's going to send over some object to it, which will contain the data off your form, where it's to go to, when it comes back, what the handler is. There's a special object inside JavaScript called an XML HTTP request. An object to hold all this data off the client. Now, if you're on an early version of Internet Explorer, and by early, I'm talking sort of quite some time back now, 5.5 and 6, to 10 or something, or whatever it's up to now, I can't remember. They were still pushing their ActiveX objects. So really what you want inside the code is something to say, well, if there is something, such as if your browser recognizes that it can cope with HTTP request objects, then give me one of those. Otherwise, if it says I can deal with ActiveX objects, then give me one of those. Otherwise, abandon ship, you can't do anything for it. So if your browser doesn't support these HTTP request objects or ActiveX objects, then you can't use Ajax to do it. but you're talking there about a browser that's pretty old for it. You know, Explorer 7 onwards, you've got it. So you may not even need this code in there. It's good to have it in, something similar to it, because you will find users still digging out an old laptop, an old sort of desktop machine that's still running Windows 7 or something, and they've still got an old version of the browser on there, or an old version of Firefox even, that may not sort of have them on. So you need to make sure that your machine can actually do it. So at this point, I mean, perhaps rather than returning null, you might return some little error screen to sort of deal with it. The send request bit, and this is a bit about here, sending requests involves setting up these sort of aspects of who's going to deal with the data when you get back. So first of all, let's get a request object, one of these XML HTTP objects or an ActiveX one. Probably forget about the ActiveX ones realistically. So this request is one of those objects. And this onReady state change section of it is the part in the object that says, when you come back, where are you going to go? So somebody's going to send you some results. They're going to send you some XML, some JSON, some text data.